why I started. So I'll be like, oh, but I know my why, right? So really quickly, jump up, jump up, jump up. See who's next to you, see who's next to you, and then ask them why, ask why, really fast. I'm gonna do the little Jeopardy music. You ready? Boom, boom. All right, guys, are you ready for your next panel? Everybody say yeah. I really think I'm at a comedy club. Okay, next to the stage. She has the balances to keep our food system in check. Please give it up to Jennifer. Start clapping now, guys. Jennifer Stojkovic.
Hello. How y'all doing? Okay, so I know we're the last panel. You've been through a lot of great conversations. We had Jane Fonda here. How dope was G.I. Jane? How amazing was she? I could not believe that woman has been at this for this long. Hopefully we can put her out of business soon because we are going to actually pass the change that we need. So I am very excited to be your keynote panel host. My name is Jenny Stojkovic. I'm the founder of Vegan Women's Summit. We are a global platform of over 60,000 women all around the world focused on changing the food system, and I am the author of The Future of Food is Female. I'm really excited. Oh yeah, that's right. It is female, come on. I'm really excited to be joined today by three of the most incredible voices in the plant-based space. We're gonna be talking about how to power the future of food through film, entertainment, and more than anything, how we build a culture around a plant-forward diet. It's so important more than ever that we are focusing on the tangible ways that we can make a difference on the planet, and those are some of the things we're gonna be talking about today. So I'm gonna invite up some of my incredible friends. Let's get started. Peter McGinnis, CEO of Impossible Foods, welcome to the stage. Welcome. Heather Mills, CEO of V-Bites, Paralympian world record holder. Woo! And Isaiah Hernandez, founder of Queer Brown Vegan. Welcome up to the stage. Y'all ready for this?
We're ready.
Let's do it. Okay, let's get
I've never had all ready and sat down, but that's good.
Oh,
It's like, get ready, go.
Exactly. Okay, first off, y'all been on a stage with these big towers before, these statues?
I haven't. I've led a sheltered life.
No, nobody else is, no Oscar winners up here?
I've been to the Oscars. I haven't been to the Academy Awards.
Of course, you've been to the Oscars,
Yeah.
of course.
I haven't had an Oscar.
Not
yet.
Not yet. We were filming
I'm
earlier.
not a good enough actress. I would have had a lot better press if I was.
So I am one of those people that hates when my bio is read and you have to stand there and they're listing where you went to college and all these things that you forgot about yourself. So I'd love to go down the line and just say a few words about what brings you here today and why you're part of the plant-based space. We'll start with you, Peter.
Sure. Peter McGinnis, CEO of Impossible. I've been in Impossible for 15 months. Who's counting? Feels longer. Here today just to have honest debates and discussions about the future of this industry. It's a critical industry, and it's an industry that needs everybody's help and support. And I think the entertainment industry can amplify what we're trying to do here in a big way. And in the end of the day, I think a lot of this is awareness, understanding, availability, accessibility. So the more we talk about it, and the more people are aware of it, and the more people that understand the benefits of it, the better it is for animals, the planet, everybody's health, you name it. So just trying to get the word out and join a coalition of the willing to do so.
Amazing. And Peter, if you could give a brief description for accessibility.
Peter, I'm an older man, balding, but I have a hat on. And I have a blue blazer on, and I'm happy to be here.
And I'll say real quick, I am Jenny. I have long brown hair. I'm wearing all white. Heather.
So I'm Heather Mills, vegan over 30 years, have the largest vegan manufacturing food companies in the world and developed them for numerous reasons: health, animals that we love, sustainability and environment. I lost my leg when I was 25, which is why I became vegan. So left leg, developed most of the prosthetics you see in the Paralympics. Probably a problem solver is what I do, whatever it might be, and that's why we're here today to talk about solutions, because we can talk all day about the issues. Most of the people in this room will know what the issues are, but what are the solutions and what are we going to do as a united group to make the difference? So that's why I've come to America, to kind of get everyone together and stop the segmenting that's going on, because we're pretty much a heavy vegan community in the UK and Europe, and we do it in a specific way, so we're not battered down by the meat and dairy industry. We actually focus on making them richer and then actually becoming more and more vegan, and that's the only way we've managed to solve it. 35 years ago I was like everybody else and saying, okay, do you know how bad it is? Do you know how this? And it was important, and we raised a huge following, but we didn't create any solutions. Sadly, until you make the powerful have a piece of the vegan pie, there will be no solutions. So that's the only way to convert the ignorant, which is what they are.
Very well said.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Isaiah Hernandez. I use he, they pronouns, and I have black short hair and wearing a green dress shirt and a blazer. And I think I'm here today as a climate media creator on Queer Brown Vegan to talk about the intersections about our environmental crisis and how that's related to the human abuses that are happening, the animal rights abuses. And, you know, I think as a climate media creator, my job has always been to be able to really empower Black, Indigenous people of color, as a lot of the dominant narratives that exist here in the global North have often really failed in providing diverse voices. And so I think for me, you know, the plant forward discussion, why I'm here today, is to really recognize is like, how do we hold space for multiple truths that are coexisting at the same time, while also acknowledging that, you know, for us, the goal here is to dismantle these large globalized food systems that are really detrimental to our planet, specifically animal agriculture, and how that really relates back to the fossil fuel industry and the border and surveillance industry in my work that I do today.
Okay, so we have quite a few folks up here that are really leading in various different ways. But one thing I think we can all agree on is if I say food to you, you're going to think about your culture. You're going to think about tradition. You're probably going to think back to something that you ate as a young child. You know, food is our identity in many ways. And yet so many of the foods that we have eaten throughout our lives, and increasingly, you know, these last few decades, those are a part of a destructive future for this planet, unfortunately. And whether we know that or whether we have access to not being a part of that is going to be a big part of today's conversation. I'm curious, perhaps we'll start with you, Isaiah, as you kind of teed it off. How did you find food connecting to your personal identity and kind of going on your journey to discovering a plant-based diet? How did your personal identity intersect?
Yeah, I think being Latino, one of the biggest things I learned about is that, you know, we're really huge on cultural stories and storytelling. And actually, a really fun fact is that Mexico is a very large fungivore population before settler colonization. And so there's this like really myth that's out there that certain foods have always been part of a culture. Like if you go to certain places in Latin America, they'll be like Coca-Cola is part of the culture, or beef tacos, and you're just like, but really is that? Because as someone that had parents that are immigrants from Mexico, they grew up on farmland, so they really grew up on localized food systems, and they weren't really rooted in this idea of mass overconsumption. And so when I was in college, and like in college, as an environmentalist, I took this class on globalized food systems, and we had to argue which is better, organic meat or GMO meat. And I kind of found it hard to really debate because at the end of the day, the animal got slaughtered. So I thought to myself, I guess like if you look at certain instances, you're fighting for things, but something in me felt really against of like, wow, I can't believe like I'm really not having these discussions with myself, and I need to really push myself to understand why is this making me so uncomfortable. And you start to recognize here in the global north, we live in a very carnonormative structure where like meat is very rooted in like toxic masculine culture of like this makes you a real man. And so when it came to my queer identity, I think when I talk about queering food systems, I'm not saying put a rainbow on it. I'm saying put justice on it. And that to me is like an expansionary value to understand that I'm advocating for both humans and non-human animals. And I do believe that those who are not vegan, right, there's a certain understanding that liberation exists on the spectrum. So for me, it's like I always loved animals and humans growing up. I was scared of dogs actually my entire life until recently. I adopted a little one. And I think for me, like, it was understanding that veganism was a way to really tap into this idea that what I'm consuming here as an individual that relies on an industrial grocery market is a bit unsustainable, and I have the economic privilege and access to start to ask those questions and to really push myself to say, are there better companies out there that are really trying to change this food system?
Wow. Okay. You had quite a college experience. Heather, I'm curious your thoughts, especially as Isaias was bringing up, gender identity. You and I have had lots of long conversations, especially in the future of food is female. How have you considered the intersection of identity and how it's related to the plant-based space?
Well, I mean, I'm a bit more simplistic, not as articulate as you, and came from a Northeast family that we were brought up on meat and sausage, and if you ever saw a vegetable, it was a miracle. It was like, well, what is that? And it wasn't, and my sister became a vegan when she was 15, and I thought she was crazy. I was like, what's wrong with you? Yeah, you're going to die. You haven't got enough protein. And this is a long time ago. I'm 55 now, and she's 52. And she used to go on these marches for the animals, and I was as ignorant as 90% of the population, or more at the time. And it wasn't until I lost my leg in a police motorcycle accident that my girlfriend came in the hospital. I crushed my pelvis, punctured my lung, and split my head open. And they kept chopping my leg off more and more with infection. And my girlfriend came in and said, you got to go vegan. And I was like, what the hell is that, in 1993? And she said, I just cured myself of breast cancer. And I said, well, not really. You couldn't have done that. And she was like, I did. So she dragged me off to Hippocrates in West Palm Beach, became raw vegan, which was pretty intense for a sausage and meat eating Geordie girl from Newcastle. And I was put on all this raw stuff, and I healed within 2 weeks. So I started writing these books about it. But then you go back to reality. You're in the north of England, it's freezing cold, and you suddenly say, I really want a burger, and I actually want to eat some cheese. And you start getting these cravings that you don't understand. So I started developing the first vegan meat burger in '94, and then the first vegan cheese, and always had this opposition from guys going, what are you doing? That's not real meat. And then eventually just not telling them it wasn't real meat, and not telling them it wasn't real fish or real dairy. And they'd be on it like a year or two, and then I'd finally announce, well, you've been eating vegan for the last God knows how long, and you haven't got a clue because you can't cook. So if you want to convert a man, just make sure you find one that can't cook. That's what I did with my current boyfriend. I found him on a train, and he was a big McDonald's, Burger King, Domino's eating guy, hot as hell. But
Hand up, where are you?
He really stunk when he worked out from dairy. So, and he snored all the time. So I said, that's from dairy. And now he's been vegan 3.5 years, only because initially I made the meat, fish, and dairy free. And now he's on wholesome, legumes and beans. And so you have to, as a woman, you have to infiltrate the man's stomach. We won't go any lower than that at the moment, but that's the key. That's the key area. You have to change it and you have to get down to the basics. Because if you try and get in the brain, forget it. You know, if you try and
What
sit,
brain?
sit exactly. Well, it's between the balls, so you get there first. So that's what you have to do. And then it's about incremental change. You know, when we were all young, we had full fat milk. Then it was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, skimmed? What the hell is skimmed milk? And now we're talking soy and oat and almond. You know, hopefully 10 years from now, the thought of talking meat and dairy and fish is like saying, give me a pack of cigarettes. That's where this should go and should be here sooner rather than later. And it fixes everything.
So he was hot, but he smelled and snored, huh?
He was hot, smelled, and snores. Now he
And you
doesn't
met him on a
smell
train.
or
I'm
snore or
intrigued.
anything now.
Oh, yeah.
That's
He's over
probably-
there. You can sniff him on your way out.
He's very sniffable now.
He doesn't have any meat or dairy. No wonder the Chinese say we stink. You know, not we, the vegans, but
That's so
dairy makes you
funny.
stink.
That is so fun.
That's your tee up.
That's
Okay?
a different panel.
That is-
but I want to hear more about this.
They're never going to invite us back, Heather. Thank you. Let's hear it.
Listen, I grew up, it's less of a colorful story. I mean, I grew up in New Jersey. Don't hold it against me. Garden State. On the Jersey Shore. It was not like the reality show, by the way. Yeah, my mother grew up in a farm in South Carolina. My father grew up in a really bad area in the Bronx. And we just ate normal stuff and what we thought was normal. We were as clueless as everybody else, and we just ate, shopped, just whatever you want. Had no clue of consequence, had no clue of transparency, what the stuff was made of, how it was made, where it was made. And it was a pretty, you know, and I say normal because there are a lot of people growing up in the suburbs of America that just grew up that way. They didn't question things. You ate what was on the table. Your mom and dad may ask, hey, what do you want from the grocery store? You may add a few things to the list, and you just went about your life. And it's crazy to think, I look back now, the lack of caring about what you're putting in your body was crazy. Part of it is you're a kid, and you think you're invincible. Part of it is you're clueless, and, you know, as a kid. And then part of it was my parents, and there was nothing malicious about it. They just didn't know any better. And so they just pushed it, or they made it available to us. And it developed all sorts of bad habits. And I look back now, you know, I come into this impossible job not being in this space, right? Studied it, was curious about it. When I ran Chobani, we launched oat milk and things like that, and dairy, you know, non-dairy creamers and stuff like that. But I looked at this industry and said, there's a communication opportunity, there's a narrative opportunity, there's an awareness opportunity. This only works if plant-based meat becomes mass. Can't be bi-coastal, can't be elitist, can't be academic, it can't be VC, it can't be Silicon Valley. It has to be food that you relate to, that you enjoy, that satisfies you. And we're not there yet, right? So some of it's the product, and we're trying it impossible to make the products better and better and better. And I think we have a very good plant-based burger. And in fact, 9 out of 10 people we talk to say that's a good plant-based burger. Well, I want it to be a good burger. I want to lose the qualification because I don't want to compete against Beyond Meat and Gardein and Morningstar. That doesn't advance anything. We want to compete against the animal analog. And in order to do that, the products have, and we have to be honest, a lot of these companies in the plant-based space are making good products. They're not great yet. So if we can make the products better, taste, texture, flavor, nutrition, so that they compete against the animal even more, and then make everyone aware of how good these products are for you, for the planet, for animals. And by the way, that's a complex value proposition. Why should I eat this? Oh, it tastes good, it's 0 cholesterol, it's 50% less saturated fat, it saves water, it saves trees, it saves land, it avoids GHG, and oh, by the way, you know, it doesn't slaughter animals. Okay. If you want to take out an infomercial for 3 minutes and explain that to the public, it's a tough, so we have to get this, and the last thing I'll say is we also have to, the meat industry is very coordinated. I had a spirited debate out there with a few folks. They're highly coordinated, they're well funded, and they are winning.
Yes.
Now, we are fragmented, not well funded, in many cases trying to save our companies, so we're a bit distracted. And they throw out things like faux, made in China, processed. Just throw things out, see what sticks. Processed has stuck. I don't do a single interview anywhere without being asked that question. Now, we got great answers for that. We just haven't come out and played offense. And look, people still think the election was stolen. So they just throw shit out there and see what sticks. And not all of it sticks. But my point is, I think we have to go back foot to front foot. We have to own our own narrative. We have to play offense. And we have to compete against the animal, not amongst ourselves. Okay, this is a big shift.
Mm-hmm. There is, there's a real concerted campaign that's happened against this industry, right? Like, let's just put it all out there for a second here, because if we're going to talk about how these foods are going to make a difference, we also need to talk about the disinformation that's going on out there, right? So who here has heard plant-based is too processed? All right, that's a lot of hands, everybody. And who here has seen a rise of, pro-meat and carnivore and keto over the last few years? Did you know that those are related? So the National Cattlemen's Association has a director of influencer marketing. They are paying influencers right now. Isaias knows it because he sees it, because he's a content creator out there. There is a concerted campaign that's going on. These things that are getting into our brain, this repeated, it's processed, frankenfood, what's faux, fake. We always say fake. Too long of an ingredient list. That was a campaign that was started in 2019. Why was it started in 2019? Well, there was a company called Beyond Meat that had the biggest IPO in 19 years, and it caught everybody off guard. Nobody expected a little tiny plant-based company out of Los Angeles could make a boom like that. And when that happened, all of a sudden, a lot of folks started paying attention. And then less than 6 months later, we saw $5 million spent on a Super Bowl ad to declare synthetic meat. How do you spell it? And that is when we really started to see this campaign ramping up. And much of your conversations you have with family members. I mean, I've got family members in small town Canada that are repeating the same points to me that I've seen created here.
Sure.
So.
And they repeat it.
They repeat it,
Yeah,
right?
And repeat it, and then it just sticks.
It sticks because it's simple.
One other thing I just want to just build on, and Jenny, you and I've talked about this. I'll give you one great example. So, and you did a lot of this work with the mayor of New York City, and they went plant-based, right? Fridays or Mondays, and they were developing a program, and the meat industry jumped on it immediately. And they put out these ads and these social posts that, they're going to revolt against the public school system of New York, and, they're poisoning their kids, and the stuff's processed. And then they put, and 8 out of 10 registered dietitians and nutritionists agree. And you're like, where the hell did that come from? So they paid like 7 people $50 or whatever, and they just put it out there. Now, no one's looking at the source. No one is really digging into it. And all of a sudden, you're busy. You're a mom, you're a dad, you're a single mom, whatever it is, and you're like, what the hell is that? What's going on? You don't think twice about it. You don't really dig into the source. And then we lost.
And that's
So we don't
how
refute.
HillaryFactCheck.com didn't work.
Didn't.
It's like you have to state the facts right there and then, because no one's going to go and look at them afterwards. In 2008, we gave $1 million worth of plant-based food to the Bronx. The Hunt Points Alliance for Children has huge amount of help in that area, but the Bronx and Hunts Point has the biggest distribution of vegetables. So I went to have a meeting with them and said, what do you do when your vegetables are, going out of date? And they said, well, we tried to donate them to the schools, but we're not allowed because we've got to go through a process and this and that. So much, like millions and millions of wasted vegetables thrown away that could go to these kids. So we did a study and analysis that basically 90% of the kids were getting $1 a day to eat. So where were they going? To the local McDonald's. So we said, this is just horrific. So we said, we'll donate the food. And the school system wouldn't take it in because they said, it needs to be repetitive for the next 10 years. So we thought, what else can we do? We set up vegan McDonald's next to McDonald's, and we gave it for free. So the kids went there and they saved their $1. Then we set up vegetable farms on the rooftops, all the flat tops, slowly introduced one vegetable at a time. And then we did analysis, reversed type 2 diabetes in 3 months, and then we got the type 1 diabetes down to 1 insulin to 2 injections a day. And the pharmaceutical industry hate this because America makes money from keeping you all sick. We don't want to make you well. You know, we're not going to think past the next 4 years of election. Most people don't want to make you well. That's how you make your money. So educating people. And then we eventually set up the New York Coalition for Healthy School Foods and implemented a vegan option with the team in every school in New York State. Brain function went up by 42%. All of this movement was driving, and we were like, finally, it's now 30 years later, people are starting to listen. And then people saw money in this sector, Beyond Meat, Impossible Burger, all these people, and they got so wrapped up in their own stuff that they didn't stay together as a community, as you mentioned before, and we're fragmented and dissected, which we're not in Europe. The solution is you have to look at making the meat and dairy industry have a piece of the vegan pie. And that is unfortunately the only solution. So in the UK, I replicated all of the famous cheese brands and said, first order for free, just put it on the shelves next to your normal cheese. All of them said no, except one company called Norseland, which was the largest. And we put them on the shelves. And then I drove the traffic through the market into it, because it's about problem solving. Now they sell more vegan cheese slices than dairy. So slowly their factories are all shifting more and more and more over. And that's the only way you're going to bring about change in America is you will never beat the meat and dairy industry until you make them all vegan. And the only way to do that is to match their products, make them amazing as you have, be the co-manufacturer for it, and let them see a piece of the vegan pie. And it's the same in energy. It's the same in everything that you're going to discuss on the climate crisis. You can stand and shout and scream about all the awful issues. I've been in this industry for 35 years. Until you actually make them see the dollar, like Beyond Meat did, but they didn't follow the whole thing through with the supply chain, the manufacturing, all the things that we had set up. People go for the quick dollar. You've got to think of the long-term picture and what are you going to do to turn it around? And that is making the meat and dairy industry so wealthy with vegan that they are no longer vegan. That's why dairy-free is winning and meat-free is going through a hell of a struggle at the moment with the bullshit word of process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, 40% of U.S. households buy plant-based dairy. Right? So there is a massive market penetration.
And you know why? Because the likes of Starbucks and everyone else is making a shitload of money from oat milk and soy milk. And, that's all that needs to happen. As soon as they're making margins from it, it's going to accelerate more and more.
Listen, when the oat milk thing, and by the way, so the fluid dairy is $18 billion in the U.S.
Starbucks is the biggest fluid dairy.
And, well, they sell more milk than coffee, yeah. But
true fact.
It is a true fact. And I think it's about 6 billion of that. 6 of the 18 is plant-based. Total global plant-based meat is 7.5 billion. In the US, it's only 2.5 billion. And it's taken off, I think, for a couple of reasons. Great uses and applications, right? I'll take an almond cap. I'll take an oat cap. I'll take an oat latte. And they democratized it through baristas. And by the way, oat and plant-based milk does quite well with coffee because of the pH. The other thing is, and I was joking around with some folks out there, I launched Chobani oat milk just calling it lactose-free milk because I couldn't go against the dairy industry because Chobani had dairy. And it was lactose-free milk. And now if you came in loving animals, fine. If you came in loving the planet, fine. It was lactose-free milk. Who likes lactose? So my second day, but this is my point. So it's very simple messaging. You called it milk. You didn't call it a beverage. You didn't call it a drink. So it's milk, and it's lactose-free. And lactose intolerance is a real thing. And rich, poor,
Black Americans.
Yeah, rich, poor, educated, uneducated. No one likes lactose. So my second day at Impossible, and we're still doing some research on it. I said we're going to call this zero cholesterol meat. Now I can wrap
Facts.
my mind around that. By the way, plant-based meat sounds kind of weird. Most people like plant. What is that? A riddle? I don't even know what the hell that means. Doesn't sound very good. By the way, again, rich, poor, coasts, interior, Nebraska. Everybody knows cholesterol's gonna get you. It's not a good thing. So how do we distill this down to its simple? And by the way, we know plant-based meat is way bigger than having no cholesterol. I'm just trying to get. What we need to focus on is getting more people to eat it
Try it.
and try it. And what is that messaging? And we haven't cracked the code. That is the holy grail here, in my opinion.
So, Isaias, you are the content creator that's up here. This is what you do for a living. You do messaging, and you have a very precarious position because you're creating intersectional content that appeals to underrepresented communities. You're talking about plant-based in a way that's non-confrontational, and then you're also talking about climate. And there is massive, massive lack of awareness around food's connection to climate. It's, upwards of 20% of GHG. It's, a third of methane emissions on the planet, which is 27 times more heat capturing than carbon. It is a huge part of it, and yet people don't know. And I'm curious, how do you walk that line? How do you have that conversation with people?
Yeah, I mean, I think on my end, like I do environmental education to empower Black and Brown communities of color because I think we've been disenfranchised from being able to even be in these conversations, right? For instance, I think ways in which I approach this justice-oriented content is through anti-racism and anti-speciesism. Like Black and Brown people of color deserve to know that I grew up accessing food bank and living on food stamps, not because my parents didn't quote unquote work hard in the American dream, but that our food system is built on racism and speciesism. The fact that we are so uncomfortable to say that the globalized food system that we rely on today it still links back to slavery. It still links back to the degradation of the planet. We need to be able to have these very political discourses and to be able to really transmutate that into social media. I think I really have found that there needs to be nuance in those conversations too, right? I think a lot of people want to be able to support these industries while also saying, I want industries to also commit to diversity, equity, inclusion, because you cannot have sustainability without diversity, and you cannot have justice without the people that are making your supplies. I tell people, like, usually the ones that are working in those supply chains are Black and Brown people.
Almost always.
Yeah, always. And I think that they're the ones who are really changing the food system, and they should be honored more. And I also think on the last note, on kind of my end, is like when communicating this type of content to communities, like younger generations really want to get politically and socially aware about these things. It's no longer like, I don't really want to get into these politics, or I'm not really into it. I know perhaps certain other generations had certain privileges, but Gen Z, for example, like we are the most diverse generation and consumers. So when I talk to industries and trying to go against these meat industries, it's really horrific the way that they play, because they're the same like fossil fuels. They will mark you, they will tag you, they will denounce you, they will say, you use a car that's not vegan, or like, did you know that your tire's made of animals, or like, that thing that you're wearing is made of animals. And it's really disgusting to see the ways in which I have to really present myself in a way of like having to advocate for justice for both humans and animals, while also trying to navigate the complexities of this capital structure. Like, I know that we all know that billionaires and millionaires are a huge issue for a lot of young consumers. And I think that, how do we have those conversations to say, like, when is enough money that we need in order to oppress ourselves? Like, what are we chasing? Because 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, will I have enough money to buy food? That's really what worries me.
Yeah, I think it's very poignant to have this conversation right now, because less than 2 weeks ago, we had a historic change to the water system here in the Western United States. Does this ring a bell to anybody? Does anybody know about this? Okay, so we've got, because we have a room of many climate activists, the average American probably has no idea that the Colorado River's drying up, right? We all know the Colorado's drying up. It is an arterial water system that provides water to 7 states, 40 million Americans. 70% of the Colorado River is going towards alfalfa. Alfalfa is a hay that is fed to cows. We're not eating it, right? And now we are facing a historic water shortage, and they have increased water prices by about 25x. That's going to be the new water prices here in Arizona, Nevada, and California. And yet it's barely making the news, right? What are we missing? Like, this is water. This is an existential crisis.
Yeah.
We need water. There are people in the Central Valley of California that do not have water because it went to irrigate alfalfa, which, by the way, 2.5 hours of alfalfa irrigation is equal to a family of four's water for a year. Like, think about how insane it is that we have a finite resource that we are using that way. What are we missing? How are we not having this conversation?
No, I think, look, this goes back to everyone being busy and clueless, and you have to make people care. And by the way, food, and I've talked to so many people. I just do my research in grocery stores, just chat with people, give them lots
That's
of
good research.
Yeah, give them lots of coupons too. But no one equates climate change with food, okay, with food choice. I don't know why they say electric cars, they say recycling, they say less electricity, less water. They will never say food. We have a calculator on the Impossible website if you put in plant-based meat versus animal meat, and it spits out a linear, totally accurate number about how much water you save, how much trees you save, how much land you save, and how much GHG you avoid. And it's a simple thing. 50 million pounds of plant-based meat at displacing animal at 50% is 25 million pounds of less animal meat, and it puts out all the numbers in 2 seconds. It's super compelling. We don't really use it. We don't market it. No one really engages with it. And we have to make people care, and you have to do it in a creative way. You have to do it in a loud way. I mean, this is like, you got to wake people up. So they're almost in like this, never land, or they're actually just consumed with their own lives and not worried about the bigger picture. So you got to make people care. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, and also give them the choices and the availability at the right cost efficiency. So in the UK and around Europe now, subsidies are starting to be discussed and removed because the British public thought that milk was cheap, but they didn't understand that subsidies means it comes from your taxes, so milk is not cheap.
Ain't free.
Yeah, so now that's
Double dipping.
Now that's happened in Norway, which is Tine is one of the largest cooperative farmer community in the whole of Europe. They're now saying, oh, we're actually at price point comparison to vegan dairy free, which puts us on a level pegging. But ultimately, it's about how do you make the farmers' lives survive post not making dairy. So you have to have the solution. And the solution was that we converted 20,000 farms from dairy farms to arable land, growing whatever grain we could grow on those lands and turn that into a plant-based food, not to feed an animal. And now they have 12 to 17% EBITDA on those farms. That's a solution. Telling a farmer that he shouldn't be cruel, he shouldn't, milk a cow, grow a cow, shoot a cow, make food out of a cow is not going to change everybody. It's going to be like 5% of realization for whatever reason. But telling him, would you like to have an easier life and, do agriculture, and actually getting the governments to subsidize agriculture while he goes through that conversion period of 3 to 4 years that actually feeds 25 times more people than the cow would, plus saves all the 93% more water and. But you have to go from farm to fork. If you don't look after everyone along the journey and keep everyone, in the picture, then there's always going to be a spanner in the works that stops you reaching the ultimate goal to help the animals, the planet, and your health. It's that simple. You have to look all the way through. It's why we need to pull out 99% of men from politics. It's basically, you get the odd crazy woman who's a man pleaser, but generally, no disrespect to the guys and everyone here, but ultimately it's what's the problem? What's the solution? Every single person along the line, you have to think, What are their issues? What are their problems? Is it financial? Is it pressure? Is it, and if you don't think along those whole lines, we're not getting anywhere. I've been repeating these words for 35 years and we're sitting in the same situation. In fact, we're going backwards because the fact that the people are believing the word processed is an issue compared to global warming and health and the death of animals. If you want to have your healthier junk food burger until you move on to some vegetables, what the hell is that going to do other than help everything and everyone? But people just who don't understand it, they repeat it verbatim. And when you repeat something that regularly, like you said, it sticks. And we have to pull that sticker off and start repeating the true facts of how the consumption of meat and dairy is killing us and the planet.
So one thing I really like, I just want to build on what you said, is that we're after getting meat eaters to eat more plant-based. So you can't vilify them, you can't judge them, you can't talk down to them. Invite them, be more inclusive, and if the products are great and we talk about it in the right way, they're going to start to adopt, right? And I think so segregating the US and playing politics and being divisive, not the way. I was talking about educating consumers and how hard that is and making them care. Heather said it's even more interesting. So what you do is you start up the supply chain and you make it economically viable for a farmer who's barely making ends meet as it is right now, and say, hey, have you thought about growing crops this way for this purpose versus that way for that purpose, and you'll make more money doing it and your life will be better, versus having a philosophical debate around animal welfare or climate change when the farmer's like, what are you talking about? Just make it economically viable. They're just trying to make a living. So the solution upstream can force more change downstream. It may be longer and more expensive to convert people, right, to pull the supply chain in a different direction versus just changing the supply chain. My 2 cents. I think it was brilliant what you just said.
No, but it's true. But sadly, we're in a world of money, and the people that do things for the wrong reasons do it for money, So if you make their wallets fatter, you've won, and it's literally that simple.
But it's pragmatic.
And then what happens is those people that you convert suddenly wake up 10, 15, 20 years later and get a conscience and actually go, money doesn't mean anything if I'm not going to make a difference with it. And they're on their last legs in their deathbed and actually go, what the hell have I done with my life? I'm going to die on a bed of dollars, or am I going to make a difference? So you have to have patience for the ignorant. I wish I was thick as pig shit. I really do, because I would just be, oh yeah, really? Does it matter? And not care so much. But when you really care, it's painful.
It's difficult.
It's painful for all of you here. It's because you care. It's painful to care, but you've got to take a deep breath and, try and be patient for those that are trying to educate themselves and catch up with you. I literally was non-stop, but and it works for a tiny percentage of people, and the rest, they just put their heads under the parapet and disappear. And so I just make great food and feed their stomachs and make them richer, and it works.
Pragmatic.
Heather Mills, never one to mince words, huh? So I want to take this back, Isaiah, to something that you referenced at the beginning. The vast majority of those that are producing the foods that we eat are typically black or brown, or oftentimes undocumented immigrants that are producing this food, particularly in the meat industry. I thought for sure JBS, being tied to using undocumented children as young as 14 years old, getting permanently maimed in meat processing plants in the United States of America was going to be the turning point. I thought for sure people would boycott. They boycotted companies for less. But what is it that you think, what is it that we're missing in this picture, from a human rights perspective? Why are human rights organizations not more on the front lines of this industry?
Yeah, I think it's the ways in which we understand the angling, because I think, in my view, the top 3 industries that are the most lucrative business models is fossil fuels, agribusiness, and the border and surveillance industry. So the industrialized food system is already reliant on fossil fuels for their technologies, and then they use migrants using service, border and surveillance industry technologies. And here in the United States, right, ICE, people say, oh, well, they're the institution that protects the country. But we know that the reason why those children that were caught 14, 15, 16, those industries is that they had weakened policy laws that allowed any individual to go pick up those children and say, oh, I'm their cousin, I'm their uncle, I'm their aunt. Take those kids, human traffic them to states like North Carolina, South Carolina, California, and then force them to work in these industries. And then they get threatened. Those kids don't really have autonomy because they're said, hey, I want to leave and go back to Latin America with my family because I can't do this. And of course, those people say, well, if you go, I will unalive your parents in Latin America. So these kids are already threatened. They have to go to these public school systems. The schools report to the governmental agencies saying there's something wrong, something's happening with these kids. You need to come and step in. The government's like, no, we don't want to handle that. Human rights campaigns and organizations, I think, I work a lot with immigration rights organizations, and they talk about some of these intersections because I think the issue is the ways in which how can we uncover these truths, but then they're usually covered up by U.S. government because they don't want that as PR press that the U.S. government is using migrant children to produce in our global food system. And we see it right now with Miami, Ron DeSantis is such a horrible individual, and literally people that are undocumented have left the state.
Terrible.
And now, of course, a lot of what you would call the quote unquote people who say they're pro freedom and pro Trump, they're like, why is my produce expensive? Why isn't anyone working there? They can't even last for a few days in the field without saying, I'm being exploited. So I think on my end, collapsing these narratives around, when it comes to the climate crisis of this human supremacist thing, it's like we have to call it for what it is and call it a white supremacist capitalistic system that we built that has literally enslaved humans in the supply chain. And slavery has never ended. It continues to exist in those industries.
All right, so it's getting a little deep here. We've tackled climate, we've tackled the human rights atrocities of the other side of things, the way that we're currently eating now. So let's look a little bit optimistically about the way we could eat. So what do you think? We'll start with you, Peter, and we'll go down the line. What do you think our diet is going to look like in the next 5, 10, and 50 years?
I mean, I think it's undeniable. Now, the other question I get asked or assertion I get jammed down my throat is the death of the plant-based industry drives me bonkers. Because I think we're just getting started. $7 billion, global market in a $1.5 trillion animal market. And so the world will go more and more plant-based because of a lot of reasons. One, health. One, they'll taste better over time. 3, did I just skip one?
You did 2 ones because they're both
important.
important.
So this is my 3rd. And animal welfare, planet welfare, water, and then the simple fact there's not enough animal products to feed the population, right? So it's going to go in that direction. How quickly? What are the growth rates? What markets are early adopters, like UK? How all that shakes out, we could debate forever. But one thing that is undeniable, undebatable, is the world will go more and more plant-based. We need to accelerate that journey. Mm-hmm. We need to make that journey easier for everyone to participate in that journey. But it's going in that direction. So 10 years from now, I envision the $7 billion category being, $100 billion. And then
you're going to get quoted on that. There's press in here. Just ready for it. I'm just kidding.
It's going to multiply pretty rapidly.
Yeah, and I mean, just to underscore that point, Cargill's CTO, Cargill, one of the largest meat processing companies in the entire world, said a few days ago, did you read this in NBC? He said, we are going deeply into the plant-based space and the alternative protein space because they know as one of the biggest protein producers that there is no way to feed 10 billion with animal protein.
Now, what they also know, and by the way, they're doing it defensively, but it's okay. I think this goes back to the pragmatism. if the meat companies are going to get into the plant-based companies because they know their demise is coming, it's still a win. Even though we don't like them, it's a win. So they know two things. One, not enough animals to feed the world. They also, their prices are soaring
Beef.
because of the drought, because of input costs, because of labor costs, because they've culled their herds. If I just look at our data, we've gone down about 15 to 20% in price, just through fixed cost absorption and operating leverage and all that kind of stuff at Impossible in the last year and a half, and the animal products have gone up 22%. And they're projected to go up another 22% in the next year and a half. That's going to be massive for the plant-based industry, right? And you're going to start to see the pricing tighten, and they know it. They see this coming. So they're scared. So they're getting in for the wrong reasons, but it's still a win to a certain degree.
Remember, it was almost a year ago we were talking about the culling of the
And it's
herds,
happening.
right?
And that's
Takes-
a 4-year phenomenon.
It
So when
takes
you cull
3
a
years
herd-
to grow a cow, right?
Yeah.
And you need to, in order
Yeah.
to resupply, we have the lowest cattle rate according to the USDA since 1967 right now.
Yeah.
That's how low our herds are. And on top of that, that's compounded by the fact that the average cattle rancher in the United States is a decade older than the average pork or chicken producer, which means they're all hitting retirement age, and their millennial children don't want the ranch. They don't, because it's a hard life. They're barely making any money off of it, to Heather's point, and there is no way for the feed costs to ever go down because the drought is not going to reverse itself. Livestock feed will just get more and more and more expensive, right?
And then it makes it easier for us. I have an algal oil company because 15 years ago, there was a tiny percentage of vegans that couldn't convert a short chain fatty acid from linseed and flaxseed to a long chain fatty acid. And I thought, wow, I hadn't even considered that. So we developed the algal oils. We have the highest level docosahexaenoic and icosapentaenoic acid. And all of these big companies came to us and said, we want to buy your algae to feed our farmed fish. And I went, are you insane? Well, we've got no omega-3 in the fish, so we need to buy your algae to feed it, because they didn't know at the time that omega-3 doesn't come from fish. It comes from the algae that the fish eat. So, of course, we said no, but other companies said yes, like DSM, Martech, and numerous others. So people were eating putrefied, feces-swimming fish with a bit of algae chucked in there. And it's not cost effective. They're realizing also that it's really, really expensive. So what I've come to America to do is to try and get all of the plant-based companies that are doing things for the right reasons, so they don't get squashed by the massive companies, to own the plant-based sector, to manufacture under 1 or 2 roofs, not set up your little factory, reach a ceiling, need to depend on private equity, VC companies, then they cut you off at the knees when you don't turn over a profit quick enough. Profit comes from mass volume and mass demand. And we've learned that the hard way and survived 35 years. So we have to bring everyone together, stop segmenting them, and then we have to think, based on your question of what are the next generation foods. Well, we created all of the protein isolates you can imagine, because we've done it for 35 years. But when we did the first pea protein burger back in 1996, it was £6 a kilo for pea protein. It was £2 a kilo for soy because of subsidies. I never liked pea protein. Way too much wind, way too much inflammation.
Wind.
Way too much. No,
Anyone else
seriously. And this is one of the main issues, because of the miscommunication. If you can digest pea protein, great. But 80% of people can't, and they have a lot of wind. And so we have to look at what is true.
I love the bread.
As you get older, your digestive enzymes reduce. And when you've putrefied your colon with meat, it takes 20 odd years to get it all out of there. So you get issues. So people who move from full-on burgers and, dairy and everything, they haven't got a great colon. It's not got a great peristalsis. So when they shove a load of fiber, vegetables in, and they get all this gas and bloating and wind, they go, oh, I'm not being vegan, I feel like crap. And they don't. It's actually clearing you out. But then you've got fructans like cauliflower, asparagus, all these things that if you don't understand that that's actually going to give you a lot of bloat and gas, you go anti-vegan. So you need to really know yourself. And the next generation of foods will be vegan FODMAP foods. for people with gut health. The gut being your brain, being, you wipe out meat, all the aggression starts to go around the planet. Just the domino effect is massive. So look after your gut and everything is solved.
Look, it all goes back to the train. Almost everything goes back to the train.
You should.
The
you
gut.
Should, yeah.
It is.
One thing I just want to pick up on, I think it's a really important point. The other thing we can do for this industry is make it a viable business industry. Sick and tired. We're not NGOs. We are for profit. We have to make money, and we should be unabashed about it and unashamed of it. The problem is we have 206 plant-based companies in the U.S. 206. 20 to 25 of them go out of business every 4 months. That's not doing anyone any favors. It's not advancing anything. And you bring up a great point. Why? Dissect, and by the way, I love ambition. I love entrepreneurialism. And when I first came to Impossible, it was go it alone and vertically integrate your supply chain. And someone had an idea to spend $900 million growing our own soy. I was like, we haven't even done a marketing campaign. We're going to grow our own soy. It's like we have, ADM, I don't love them, but they've been doing soy for 100 years and they have $12 billion worth of factories. And we have to build our own factory for $475 million. So I do the math and I said, with inflation, that's $580 million. So we're going to use half our money. And then what? Why don't we just use a co-manufacturer, use other people's money, other people's muscle, let us do what we do, and they do what they do. It's okay, right? Now, what does that do? That enables you to put money into R&D. That enables you to put money into marketing. You don't have to do it all. You can't go it alone. It doesn't work. And by the way, if we're competing against massive companies, Fortune 100 companies that have gazillions of dollars, and we think these small plant-based companies are going to go it alone, it's not going to happen.
No.
So it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to have a coalition. It's okay to have partnerships, joint ventures, licensing agreements. I don't care what it is, but going it alone and competing alone and not coming together as an industry hasn't worked and will not work.
Absolutely. Isaiah, what's the next generation going to eat?
Yeah, I think, when I started, I asked once at a climate event, I said, if you have any vegan food, and the guy took out a banana and a wine bottle, and he's like, here's your food. So I hope that that's never the option ever again.
Story of my life.
Yeah.
I went to Cannes Film Festival and ate at McDonald's.
It's horrible.
Facts.
But yeah, I think with the next few years that are upcoming with cellular agriculture, it's a new big thing in lab-grown meat. I hope that corporations realize that apoliticalness for future consumers is not going to work. Like, you must be political. You must stand for Black Lives Matter. You must stand for queer and trans liberation. You must stand for pro-immigration, pro-animal rights, pro-human rights, because the more that you silence yourself and you're saying, we're changing the food system, but we're not going to talk about BLM because that's too political, we can't lose, then that means we're already losing to the same people who are trying to be silent. And we can no longer be silent in the food system. Like, we have to really understand that we work with corporations. Like, I work with nonprofits like Support and Feed, which is Billie Eilish's mother's org, to communicate this information and to work with businesses like you all to understand, like, I recognize I can't do this alone without the big players in industries with the money, and I can't work institutionally without the nonprofits, and we need to come together and recognize, like, apoliticalness is not going to get us justice anymore.
Facts. And you've been a supporter of VWS, you've been a supporter of VWS, and so have you. Really getting around this Big Ten approach of, how do we talk about what the future food system is going to look like and how do we make it equitable for everyone? I realize, I don't know where we're supposed to have a flasher somewhere. I don't see it, but I think we're getting ready to wrap. So I wanted to say thank you so much to all of you for listening to this deeply informative talk. I think we dove into way more than the cue card said. This was a little softer, but we got intense, and I hope that this was a good learning experience for all of you. I hope we connected some dots that perhaps hadn't been connected before. So I want to say thank you to everyone, and thank you so much to the Hollywood Climate Summit team for everything you've done.
Thank you.
I'm just doing a final announcement. Yeah. Hey everyone, Thank you so much for being here today. I have been hearing incredible things. I'm going to move this direction. If you weren't here this morning, my name is Allie Weinstein. My pronouns are she, her. I have medium length brown hair, wearing a lime suit jacket, and lemon pants. Woo! I'm one of the co-founders, executive producers, and for this year, director of programming for the Hollywood Climate Summit. We are incredibly grateful that you all came today. We'd love to encourage you to come back tomorrow. We're kicking it off with a must-see keynote that is about the intersection of disability, climate, and media. It is so important. I highly recommend that you come at 9 and see it. We have a whole day of programming tomorrow, as well as a lot more yummy vegan food. Tomorrow night we have our Eco Bash. We would love to see you there. It's a great party, and we're having a slow fashion show. And then Saturday we have our yoga session with Walk Good LA, as well as our concert with intersectional environmentalists. So we'd love to see you all there. I've been hearing incredible things about all of you. Everyone keeps coming up to me saying that everyone's so nice. They've made so many new friends. It's a great community, and we really love that, and we can't wait to have you guys foster more relationships tomorrow. So yeah, we'll see you all then. Have a great night, everyone.
There has been a significant lag in climate storytelling for decades.
The really great writers of this moment have to write about what's happening to all of us.
This is Hollywood's role of a lifetime.
When we began this work, we knew that we needed to understand the challenge. USC analyzed over 37,000 scripts from 2016 to 2020. Only 2.8% included any climate change keywords. Climate change takes up more than just 2.8% of our daily thoughts and actions.
We're standing on the precipice of the greatest creative challenge humanity has ever known, the climate crisis. But we're missing the stories that can help us navigate it. The purpose of the playbook is to change that.
Ensuring that film and TV center climate justice and climate change stories.
This is literally a playbook that tells you how to do this in a way that is organic to story.
The things that we make that don't include climate change, those are the things that are science fiction.
We are in the age of systemic change, and the time to act is now.
Bloomberg Philanthropies have hit it out of the park, launching the Good Energy Playbook.
You don't need to be a climate expert to write about it. You just need to be a human who cares. We can help with the rest.